Hey, well, welcome to the Dream Labs. Boy, this is an exciting day. All of a sudden, I'm just kind of quietly putting some pieces together here, and I get this note from Ike And man, I tell you what, Ike, it's good to have you on board, and Shadow as well. I know you're very, very busy, but good to know you're coming out of it. So not a problem here, Ike. Why don't you fire away and see what we come up with here, if you're still on board with us here. And believe me, it's so good to have you guys on board. And Ike, I know you've been very busy for a long time, but sometimes life gets in the way, and you're kind of back at it. So good news on that front, too. And before I answer any of your questions, Sarah, let me just begin this conversation today by saying how much I really appreciate it can be, yeah, Electric Eddie, that's right, Shadow. But I do want to take a moment here to thank each one of you for your patience with me over the last couple of weeks with my wife's situation. Things are okay. It's just one of those matters when things come up, I have to take care of the appointment time, make sure she's okay. And again, I can't thank you enough for your patience with me on that matter. And we started one. Hey, Shadowkin, thanks very much, Doctor. Good to have you on board. And I know you've been a very, very busy man, but so far so good. She's doing well. And at the end of the show, presentation, I have to make a couple of announcements regarding some scheduling for the next 2 weeks or so because of those situations with Pam. So hopefully all is well, and so far so good. And exciting stuff. I think started this program, this motorbike or motorcycle program, just I think it was a week ago, Tuesday, and I wanted to pick it up again on Thursday. Hey, thanks very much, Brett. I appreciate it. And I picked it up a week ago on Tuesday, and I'm hoping last Thursday to kind of wrap some things up and extend onto it. But the good news, in between times, I got some permission from the gang I'm working with. This is all done by gratis. It's not a commission piece. It's just I'm helping a team out here as best I can with my son's group. Now they've asked me to look at some. Thanks, Shadowkin. I really appreciate it. They've asked me now to kind of take a look at maybe doing some form studies for this thing. They're starting to build this machine. It's going to go into a land speed system. So I'm going to start today's little presentation by giving you an overview of the actual logo studies we submitted. And then I'm going to do a couple little sketches here on some elevations and maybe some little thumbnail sketches on what that form might look like for this e-bike, this championship form here. All right, hi, Brett, here we go. Number one, how do you know if the form I drew is correct in comparison to the reference? Number two, the first one, I think, that's a very delicate question to answer, Brett. I think it's interesting to look at it from this perspective. When I look at something, for example, let me just qualify this by saying this. Rarely do I look at something as a reference, and I don't mean that to be rude at all. I'm just saying that my mind is out there in left field, and I'm just kind of going on a wing of it and creating things as I go. Yes, there are references to look at sometimes, but I really don't follow that formula. I think to help you answer question number one would be this. Number one, how do I know if the form I drew is correct in comparison to the reference? What I would check with is what kind of personality are you putting into that reference and that transfer into your sketches. In other words, saying that is, yeah, the reference exists, but give it your personality and duplicate it as best you can. Be very accurate in that perspective, but don't lose sight of the fact that you've got a personality in your sketches to put in format. So that's number one. And I think the idea of comparisons to me, and I'll say this with every ounce of respect for you, Brett, what you don't want to get into is comparisons. Comparisons are suicidal. I'd love to compare myself to Sid Mead, but I can't. No one had that kind of ability. That guy is absolutely phenomenal. I can't put that in a comparison. I can't compare, for example, to be as gifted as Edward Weston in watercolors. I'd love to be able to be talented as he is, but I only look at that in what he does and what Sid does and what Edward Messon does from a watercolor perspective and try to duplicate what he's doing with my personality in it. And that's what I'm trying to get across to you, Brett. Number one, best answer, do not compare with the reference. Put your personality into it and just ignore the fact that you're doing a duplication. You're putting a spirit into it that's yours. Help. Number two question. I'll just kind of go down the line here. We can kind of draw back and forth here and chat back and forth as we go here. Second question. How do I know the way of the form is perspectively correct when I'm dealing with something organic and round? Best answer there, Brett, is to when you know you've got a very compound shape or a very organic piece, first thing to do is put it into a perspective volume. Is it cubistic? Is it rectangular? Is it cylindrical? Is it conical? What are the surfaces looking like? Build those first and then carve those shapes out of it. In fact, you might I've done a couple of things on Twitch here, getting into that volumetrics. You might go back to that as a reference if you can find it on YouTube or on my Twitch series here. That's when you know the perspective is correct when you're dealing with something organic and round. You actually build it. You don't guess at it. I know you don't misunderstand me. You're not guessing at anything. Go back and use volumetrics. I'll be showing you an example today about how volumetrics will work with this e-motorcycle thing. I'm just looking at basic all shape. It's a form or a volume. In this case, it might be rectangular, real thin, could be organic, could be round. But I'm going to look at that volume from the point of view of the 5 basic solids. Is it spherical? Is it conical? Is it a cube? Is it a rhomboid? Or, and the last one, is a cylinder? That stuff really helps. So that should help to address question number 2. On to number 3, how do I add and subtract from forms without using my perspective when dealing with round and even not round things? Again, same answer I gave you in number 2. If you got to start with a basic form, for example, let's just kind of give you an idea. Let's say if you did this, a little illustration there before we start. If I took that same form, let's say I have, let's see, how do I write this? Okay, if your perspective is such, let's say you build this shape by doing this. Let's do a little organic piece here. Let's kind of just crank this thing up. If I have this, and then my drive lines are doing this, there's my basic volume, right? I've just built that into the shape. I'm drawing right through it. I'm using volume. This is a rectangular form. If, for example, I want to add onto that shape by coming up on top, let's say I pick my perspective center. And I get to that point right there, and I draw a line through here, and I lift that, and I want an angle back here, and that angle is added here, and it's added here. And my launch point is here. Now I've got this coming up to that coming up and connecting the dots. There I am. Now let's say that this shape, it's very round. So I come back to here, find a perspective center, go to the major, build in the volume here. Now I'm going to add on to that. There's my cylinder. I get my instruction. I come back out and create that second form, connect the dots there by adding the perspective. Now I go back inside that. Now I've just developed a shape that just changed dramatically as a result of that whole form. Now let's do this. Let's kind of carry on and see if it's got something back here like a rider of some sort. I come back and pick up that same theme, add on to it, come back into it, into the center line here, and draw through it. Now it's a little bit more organic. Great, I've got the volume to work with. There it is, right? I can combine that shape. Look what I've done as a result of just picking apart and what the volumetrics are doing here. It's the same thing. So the best way to understand volumetrics is to learn more how to see through it. Yeah, absolutely correct, Brett. That's what we're getting at. Notice I started with this. Let me highlight this. I started with this. It was this volume, that, to that, to that, to that. And I came right through it, and there, and I connected all of that. It's a rectangular shape. Draw through it, find out where I am. Now I use that as a reference point to add on to that. There's my reference point here, there. I drew a line through here, come back up on top, change the angle. From that point, connected the dots. Notice, all back in perspective. It all works in perspective, and also in what it takes is understanding where those volumetrics go. Now you go to round surfaces, look at this. Now, you go to round, find the perspective center. There's my major axis. Rotate the circle in perspective, draw through the axis, come back out again, connect the dots, and there again, you've developed a compound form from a very simple volumetric. I hope that helps. Does that make sense? Brett? Hang on for a second. Everything, Shadows, is making sense? It's so interesting because, again, it's the same thing when you're doing, for example, another kind of form like this. If we start here with that volume, and you come back to this volume, and you draw through it, and you draw through it, and you come back in and begin to pick up certain lines. This pen will work here. There it is there, in the fender, and in the glass, in the body form, far side tire, underbody, that same shape. I'm drawing a volume there and just drawing through it. Let me get it better. Yes, simple path to a complex, yeah, that's it. It's a simple path to a complex problem. Let me just change pens here. Look what I did here. Same thing. Plant it, draw through it. Perspective, perspective, perspective. Fender, drop it in, pick it up into the glass. Notice the height. Come back and pick up my width, center line. Rear form, into shape, run through it, ground line to ground line, center line to center line, underbody, roll under, form, into tire, into form, again, into tire. Real quick little sketches here, okay? Does that make sense, Brett? Look at that. Look at how that just worked right out in terms of, again, drawing through the volume. What's the volume in a case like that? The volume is this. Let's go back to a red pen. Here's my volume. What I've done is this, to this, to that, to that, to that, to that. Added a top on it, back in perspective, and built that form right out of that shape. Does that make sense? I'll stop here for a moment, make sure we're communicating all right here. These are great questions, by the way, Brett. I think those are really excellent questions, and I think that really serves it well to keep it that direct and that simple as you go through it. It all comes down to understanding what the volume is. This is the most important part. What's that volume doing? Period. That's it. And the more organic it gets, for example, let's go down here with this. Let's see, Brett, gotcha. Also, I noticed that drawing through something means that you have to understand and feel how the shape looks, flight from more than so. Yeah, it is. You have to walk around it. That's a good point, Brett. Excellent questions. I'm sure this could help others in the VOD. What's really going to help too, and I think in cases like this, your question again, Brett, your response is, gotcha. I noticed that drawing through something means that you'd have to understand and feel how the shape looks like from more than the video. I've said this many times in conversation on Twitch. When I draw something, I see the end from the beginning. I have an image of it. I have a vision. That's what you're saying there, Brett, in your conversation there. Understanding it. I see what the vision is. Now, does that mean it's correct? No, it's a guide path. It's a plot line to get me from point A to point Z. And I think when I go through that, it changes and adjusts, and I adjust accordingly. That's what makes it so unique. And again, understanding the volume, understanding what you're seeing doesn't make it our vision, for example, in the backtrack a minute here. When I say know the end from the very beginning, what I mean by that is I see the image. It doesn't make it correct, but as I walk through it, I might make changes as I go. I've done it billions of times when we go through a drawing exercise. It's been absolutely amazing how that adjusts. So hopefully those three questions will be a good pivot point for you to kind of build on these things. And the last thing I'll say to you as well, Brad, is this. When you go through these complex questions and all of a sudden that doubt creeps in, always revert back to one simple thing. Know thine enemy. And the enemy is your mind. The enemy is, oh, you can't do this. Yes, you can. If you go right back and resort back to volumetrics right here and always build those shapes. I mean, I remember going through Sid Mead's program at CCS. Amazing. He would not draw. He'd not let us do this. He did billions of these. He understood what the volumes were doing. He took all kinds of time, for example, even a thing like a sphere. Okay, let's start here. He took that shape right there. Now, what is it? Is it flat? Is it round? You'd go back in and say, okay, now cut into it. Now slice through it. Now change its character. Cut a section into it. Look what you've done with that. That's knowing what that volume is. Now it's round because now we know that the axis is here, it's here, and it's there. Now we're back into this. And so we add to it. Let's add to that. Come up and do this. Now let's add something else to that. Put a landing platform on it. Maybe this is an all-terrain vehicle of some sort. All of a sudden, look how you can look at that same basic form, and by knowing where you are with that volume and how to build off of that shape and building shape into it, into the section, look at that, it all falls together. And out here, another maybe auxiliary tire, I don't know, down the ground line. This is just a hypothetical sketch. But again, get into a tire geometry right here. This all floats. That might be cockpit out here. Who knows? I mean, it could be cockpit up and through here. Just fun stuff. Look what you've done. Just a simple little message like that. And it's really interesting how it all comes together. Brett, you can be your own worst enemy or be your best test friend. I learned that receiving you something this yeah, that's exactly it. You can be your worst enemy or your greatest friend. That doesn't mean, for example, that when you do something, oh, look how good I am. I mean, I've never felt that way about my work. When I do my stuff, believe me, Brett, it's always transitional. Oh, okay, that's done. I can get better. I can get better. I can get better. But I've never gotten to the place where I felt defeated by it. I've always felt like, okay, I've learned something here. One of the biggest thing I've learned over my career, this hopefully will help you in closing here. The greatest thing I've learned is this. When you begin to draw something, have a plan of action in mind. See what you want to accomplish. Visualize it. It might not be right, but visualize it. Build the volumes, carve it out, and begin to refine it. So there it is. Start, build, refine. Simple as that. What do you think? Brett, helping? I'll wait for a response here. Shadow, hey, thanks for the input there. Really, they are great questions. Very, very helpful. Good deal, Brett. So again, so grateful to have you on board, Brett. I've missed you being on, and I know you had a very busy schedule, but I've missed you. Hey, Demetrius, is it you see the image and then just put, yeah, you see the image. Let's go back to that again. Coming in clear. Back to Demetrius here. Thanks, Demetrius. Good to have you on board here. Is it you see the image and then just put it on? Yes, that's part of it. It's that mental discipline of saying, okay, I've got an image for our new spaceship. It looks like, in my mind, I see it like this. Now, when I see, I'm going to break it down into volumes. It's cylindrical, it's rectangular, it's got spheres on it. It's all these volumes are coming together. I'm going to build it from that point of view, then begin to refine it and carve it out and begin to develop that shape. That to me, from the learning perspective, it eliminates a lot of mistake and error, and it also boosts your confidence. That's one of the great things about the drawing process that to me is the most unique thing of all. The more you draw, and I'll say this, and I hope you don't misunderstand the context here. Let me put it in real-time perspective for you. The more mistakes you make, the stronger you're going to become. I dread people. I've worked with people, for example, I've met individuals who say, well, I don't make mistakes. Well, guess what? You are a mistake. Oh, that's an awful thing to say. But it's true. We're not perfect. We can't be perfect. There's nobody that I know was perfect. Now, Sid Mead was closest to it, but he was never perfect. He never clarified that. He always pointed out to us in the drawing process that you can't have all the answers. But as you make mistakes, you'll discover the answers, and all of a sudden it all begins to fall into place. So let's hope that helps. What do you think, Demetrius? Does that help to answer your question? Great stuff today, gang. It's almost like a little chat session here. Meet the press, or meet the idiot wearing a coat. Me. Hey, all right, Demetrius, very cool. What do you think? Want to get started in this e-bike program? I bet it's a long process. Yeah, a very long process. Well, from my perspective, I bet, I've been at it for a long period of time. This is almost my 40th year in design. And believe me, meet the fan base. Back to your question, a long, long process of trial and errors. I've been at this business for 40 some odd years, I bet, and I can honestly tell you, I'm more ignorant today about so many things than I was yesterday. It just keeps getting bigger. It gets more and more blossoming. It's more and more intriguing. It's phenomenal how it all comes together. So, boy, I'm going to start today's conversation by thanking you for the input. This is great. Nice. Every now and then it's good to have a little bit of conversation like this and begin to absolutely show you how, hopefully will help you get things put together and how things are done. So all that to say, let's go back into this. Let's go back. This came about, maybe about 10 days ago. A group came to me and said, hey, we're looking at this. We've got this new potential build for an e-motorcycle, a record-breaking motorcycle. But we need a logo. So I said, okay, I'll crank on some logos for you. So I'm going to walk you through the logo studies first. And I just found out yesterday that they'd like me to do maybe a series of concept sketches on maybe some elevation sketches on what this thing might look like from a land-based, land speed form element here. So at the end of the stream, I'll go back in and do a couple of those little thumbnail sketches and keep you posted. Again, I'll point out too, during that latter part of the process today, back to your questions, Brett and Demetrius, about how these forms will work and how I see certain things. Hope that'll help to clarify what we talked about earlier. This is where I started, for example. These are real quick little pencil sketches about maybe no more than about maybe 5 or 6 minutes per page, just cranking through these things. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time describing them. I went through a whole series, you'll see from start to finish, a whole variety of possibilities. Is it chassis? Is it very simple? Is it a cord with a little wheel and a little lightning streaker, electric charge in it? Is it more of this form? Is it chassis related? Is it very simple with an E form and a little graphics going through it? And I think, Demetrius, you were on board with this last week when we were going through this stuff. So I went back and regrouped on some of the sketches and spent some more time doing some of the work on it here. So let me go through these very quickly. And there's phase 1 is over here. Second phase, and notice I started to open up a chassis and then back to these kind of, it just really wasn't, I really didn't feel comfortable doing the letter type. It just didn't seem to fit the paradigm. It didn't fit the bill. There were some neat things happening. This is, I'm back in, I really wanted to look at, and then from their input, to me, was aggressive, simple and aggressive. So there's a second page we did, and let's see, let's put those together. Third one, back into again, just trying to simulate the handlebar look from like a front elevation. Back to body form again. Some of these little guys made sense, and I really wasn't, again, I'm not really in favor of this. It almost looked like a Gatorade logo. It just doesn't have the same impact. Even here, trying to use a letter form, didn't have the same impact to it. But things like this started really clicking in terms of putting pieces together. So let me move along here very quickly. I'll go through this. Now, let's sort of shift gears. Now some things start to happen. Getting that little electrified look at it, getting more of the chassis look into it. You got it. So then again, back to some of the letter forms. Again, back to chassis. These are really quick sketches. And let me just back up for a moment here. The intent of this whole process was to floodgate the ideas and let this team take a look at, this works, this doesn't work. It's a matter of that communication again. which I think is extremely critical in a design process. No one has all the answers. My task is just kind of floodgate the whole operation, give them enough to look at, and then they're going to make the decision on which way they're going to go. Now, this is where, Demetrius, I think where you picked up here the last week. I started moving in again. This was done live a week ago, Tuesday, I believe. And we just started looking at some things, and there's some interesting things happening. Like maybe this was kind of interesting, but again, that letter form just didn't have the same impact. This was pretty close to some things that might be interesting. And by the way, as I go through all these too, let me forewarn you, I just didn't put a lot of typeface in. I'm just looking for the image first. Get that black and white simplicity down, get that element down, then begin to work with them to put the finishing touches on it. So there's first pass. Now we started to kind of shift gears a little bit. Now I went more to the chassis side of things. I think this started to get some really interesting impact here from where we're after. Again, back to the plug-in device, a little bit of the lightning strike electrified look. This had some character to it, I thought. Maybe a little bit out of the ordinary, but it had some character to it. Then we went back to this, for example. Let's move along here. Get to the 7th page. Things again, just variations on theme. Is it more of that kind of chassis look? Is it almost like a drop bike of some sort? Don't know. Just again, taking chances. And let's go to number 8. Notice again, pretty interesting set of themes. A little clumsy in this guy. It almost looked like, I'm trying to get that E to kind of read through there, but it just, again, that letter form just didn't lend itself to a good, really crisp logo. And I don't think it really had an impact to it. This was kind of interesting. I mean, you picked that up a little bit in some of the basic theme work. This was kind of a nice approach to it, just keeping it simple. And I think that's one of the great battles for me, the challenge of this whole stuff, and logo especially, no matter when I do a logo piece, simplicity is essence. And the more you get it, break it down. I always thought in terms of, we're showing a little bit of color here. What's it look like in black and white? What do the separations look like? Can it be easily identifiable? When you add the graphics to it, they know it's going to be an e-current program, or is it a e-bike of some sort? So they'll know what that is. And then the graphics added will help to really flatter that. This is where I think the transition took place. This started to get pretty interesting. All of a sudden, I really focused in on just basic chassis stuff and got really unique in terms of, let me rephrase that. More bold or bolder with some of the form studies and getting chassis related, just letting a lot of airspace go through it, and then we could fill in some of the blanks if they needed to. But again, it really had a lot more personality. It's just coming back into maybe some of the battery loading systems here. That's what those indications look like. Let me stop here so far. Is this making sense, gang? Am I going through quickly? I don't want to spend a lot of time here. Just there's a lot of really quick sketches. But the first part of the stream here today is just to show you an overview of where the logo development was. Then I'll spend a little bit of time doing some form studies here on the bike itself. So let me just take a moment here, kind of take a bit of a break and get some feedback from you. What do you think, gang? Is this making sense? And if there's anything there you kind of strike or you see, let me know what you think. Really appreciate your input as well. So what do you think, gang? Move along here. So the next thing, this was a breakthrough in a little bit because it kind of changed the paradigm. I started to get more and more comfortable with that very simple graphic element of black and white, very gossamer looking, but at the same time stunning in terms of putting those. Making a lot of sense. Your pace is also good. Don't worry. Thanks very much. I really helped it. So there we are. And there was another set, and then went back to some abstract pieces again. Try to get more and more ethereal with it. I don't know if that really works at all or not. I mean, the more maybe this is a case where the more you leave out of it, the more mysterious it is, but I'm not quite sure they're there yet. They might need more body to it. For example, they're pretty gossamer. But again, that's another approach. Can you get by with minimums? That's what this is looking at here. Very much of a minimum piece. Let's go back to the next set here. Again, now back to, again, this is starting to take on some character here. Notice from here, this last page, which is very, very thin. Let me move this over a bit so we can get these guys to work together. Notice how we went from a very gossamer look here, very ethereal on this side, to get a little more compact or impact in it, just more guts to it. It helped, I think, an awful lot to kind of put more beat in it and put a little more punch into it to kind of make it function just a bit better. So again, this is a turning point. Those sketches I did last week, Demetrius, there was a start, but I want to go back in and look at more variation on theme, so that they could begin, that they being the team could look at, oh, I really like this, not that, let's cancel this look out, let's amplify this. On this page, I thought that was intriguing. It had a bit of a different stance to it. It was electrified and had a very simple chassis piece to it. And maybe this had some potential, but the angles are a little bit clumsy. But I think there's some things happening in these sketches that they could hopefully utilize. On to the next one. Now really started to get more abstract. All of a sudden, putting the actual pilot in place, being a little more, do they want that look? I don't know. Very strong plugging device here, a little bit of battery involved in it. Again, a little bit too ethereal, I think, but again, back to this look. And again, this look started to get some of the character to it, that same kind of human stance to it, very, very aggressive looking. That was helpful, I think. And let's go back into some more of these. And then again, these are interesting. Again, notice I went back to the letter forms. I didn't want to give up on that too much. But again, I just proved to myself, the more I went back to this stuff, there were some pretty interesting operations here, but that might be a little more intriguing, but it didn't have that same bike or more land speed motorcycle look to it. I think that was part of the thing that this team was looking for. The infusion of what the bike might look like, plus a logo to enhance the bike. That's what's really the challenge here. So again, back to the letter forms. And this, I tried to incline like speed, for example, or motion. I just didn't care for that character. It slowed it all down. It looked very cartoonish, and I didn't really appreciate that from my point. But you know what? I'm glad I got it out of my system. I built it, I resolved it, and I went, nope, that's not the good way to go here. So move along here. Now back into some graphics here. Even went into some of the little perspective overview. Not a bad challenge to look at, but it's too complicated. People don't see logos in terms of, and many of them in perspective. They're very flat elevations or plan view drawings and so forth, make a whole lot of sense. This is the one time I think where it really started to make some sense. This is where that one letter form, using the letter to kind of convey with that chassis, and now that has some potential, maybe. I'm not here to judge which are going to be selected as far as yays and nays. This has an interesting approach to it. I'd lift this little bolt, if they go that route, I'd lift that off the back and be a little more streamlined so it all kind of combines together. So let me stop again right here before we wrap things up here for some sketches. What do you think, gang? Is this making sense at all? Is there anything here you're seeing that has an impact? Do I have the right personality? Do I have the right flavor to it? I mean, I just went all over the place looking for possibilities and some resolutions on this stuff. So what do you think? I'm Brett, Demetrius, you with me in shadow? I know you're busy, but just if you can, fire away your yays and nays, thumbs up, thumbs down, and we'll go on here. All right, here we go. Got some good there, making a lot of sense. I think the wheels need flavor. However, all of them are right. Yeah, that's it. Like the bottom right, this guy right here. Yeah, I think that's the one, bottom right too. Yeah, I think that had some potential to it. That started to look like, this is where I started to break through, guys, a little bit on this. Going back to, remember that we talked about these letter forms. You know, they're very difficult to deal with. Let's go back to that one. It's hard to put that in a sequence. I took this theme right here on this page 13 and then moved it into something like this, just kind of modified it a little bit, and this all of a sudden had some real character to it. It made sense. It looks like an E program. It looks like a bike, a little bit Valerie, and the wheels, you're right, Brett. The wheels need some more definition. I'll get into some things like drop shadowing and more detail and the like, smoking and the like, and we'll go from there. So thank you. That helps, gang. And that was a springboard right there on that guy. Then let's see, let's move along here. There we go. Back to some pretty abstract pieces. Again, looking at this kind of thing might be interesting. I'm not sure. Again, pretty busy. That just does not make it, nor does it just is, again, a good cross section of yays and nays and do's and don'ts, and moving along here as we go. So there's another page. This started, I went to more full chassis. It's got more of that closed-bodied form to it, and getting more of a chassis look. This was interesting. You said put that together. It might have some potential. This might have some potential. It's very simple, but it has, and they could put graphics in here, for example, like the E or the nomenclature. That began to help, I think, a little bit. And then we go back to this. It just moved all over the place, and I think what I feel good about, and I'll just say this for what it's worth, what I'm happy about is I didn't ignore a lot of spread. I just let things happen in a natural course. Whether they're good or bad is not the fault. I think when you work with anybody, you give them your best options and your best thoughts and let them decide whether it's good or bad, or efficient or inefficient. So we go back to this guy. Let's go back to this. And again, notice, not bad, some little interesting things here in full chassis involved in the pieces, getting more of the helmet form and more of the occupant. Not bad here, could be a bit more of a variation of the theme. But again, some very, just, what amazes me about the whole creative process, how lucid it can become. If you let things go, this goes back to your question too, I've read about letting things go, for example, being very lucid with it is sometimes very helpful, because that lucidity will help you begin to develop the volumetric behind it all, support that design idea or illustration you're working on. So last but not least, let's go to the final sketch here, last page. Last one again, went back to, I mean, this was kind of interesting. I didn't really care, again, back to the E, but this simplification here, full body chassis. Oh, let me move this down a little bit. Full body, a little more spoke definition, a little bit of a plug-in, a little bit corny there, but I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But it can be more full bodied with this thing. And then even the simplicity of this, that whole family where it's just a simple little electrified piece and a little bit of a cockpit or occupant passenger on that thing could be kind of interesting. So that gives you a really good overview of where I was, for example, from last week to this week. And again, as I said, I really missed Thursday's definition because of family. Yeah, the helmet idea is neat. I think that's a good point, I think they're going to bring that into play here whenever the final design, if we can make that function and work with some of the sketches that this team begins to select, I think that's more than appropriate to work with. So thanks for the input there, guys. I think that's it. I like the tires on the bottom right. Tires on the bottom right. Yeah, this guy right here. You like that one, Demetrius? Sorry for the silence. It's waiting for a response, or make sure I got the right one there, Demetrius. Yeah, I think that you're right. I think that's what I was referring to earlier, and you brought it up as well. Tires need some definition. I don't think it's as graphic as this, but a little bit more speed involved. And there it is in motion. No, it goes from thick to thin and into a little bit of drop shadow here. Now, what happens in between? It's going to be. I think that's the form I'm going to work with on some of the tire geometry as we go through this. It's fierce, but can you ride it? Yeah, you can ride it. Just kind of sit on the ledge right here, Shadow. You look pretty good shape. Good stuff, gang. This is really very, very good. Very helpful for me to have your input on this stuff. Believe me, oftentimes I go through a family of shapes and forms and then develop it and give it to the individuals to review. And it's a bit of a lonely feeling because you don't not quite get the feedback like I do here on Twitch, which is really, really helpful. So with that thought in mind, let's go back to this. Let's try something here. Let's get this stuff out of the way. Let me clip this back together. And I'm going to go through just a couple of really fast form studies here on what this bike might begin, this e-platform might look like. So let me just switch gears to newsprint from that, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of Prismacolor pencil here. Now I'm going to go very rapid with just what I refer to as some really interesting. I also notice that you normally use simplicity as a currency. So when you put details in part of the logo, you can you compromise in other areas and make the other areas simple. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Again, very excellent observation, Brett. Yeah, you can get to a place where you use simplicity to get it down to an essence. What are the three or I almost like doing a logo? It means three essential pieces. Maybe it's the embodiment, the embellishment, and then the resolution. Get it down to three if you can, no more than four. Then we begin to see that, add the details where you need it. For example, maybe drop shadowing certain things, or dropping a shadow on the ground plane, or putting more, maybe emphasis on the typeface. That's all yet to come yet. So I think that's a great observation. Thank you. So let's look at this for a second here. Let's say this is a land speed form. I'm just going to go through some really rapid sketches here. Just kind of using a little bit of newsprint. Come back in through here. Trying to get more of a bullet form here. Going to push through this guy just a bit. Cockpit. Maybe it's closed bodied like this. I don't know. A little cut line here, entry egress. Maybe this whole thing, this whole canopy opens up and balloons into it. So we've got a little bit of there's a little change of pace. So just some of these little thumbnail sketches about what these forms might look like here. Let's kind of put a little bit of this into it. Brown shadow. Let's switch gears here, the deeper pencil here. A little bit of an intake slot of some sort. I mean, I'm just trying to explore what this form might look like as far as a full body elevation study here, just to kind of get things started with what we're at here. There's one pass here. Let me just sharpen a couple of sticks here. You know, it might be just a simple matter of coming back in and saying, all right, maybe it's this, to this, into this. Extend that wheelbase just a bit. Section through this guy. That's simple. We are right there. What do you think, guys? A couple little thumbnail sketches here about what this form might start to look like. Very differently for coming back in. Let's see what happened here. We have a little bit of this. don't know if it's going to be a closed caption piece or a closed cockpit. It's kind of what it might look like if you do that. Just on the whole body form and just doing a lot of graphics in this thing. Nice and simple, nice and clean. I'm gonna stop right there, gang. What do you think so far, gang? Out of the ordinary? I mean, I'm just starting with some very loose little thumbnail sketches, sort of getting some of the character down, getting some gestures put together, and looking at maybe going a little further with some of these like front elevation studies. That could be kind of interesting where you got a lot of, this could be kind of nice too. We actually put some canards off of that side as well. So what do you think, gang? So far so good? Helping? Trying to put some of this stuff into action. I think the unique thing about this is if this is a closed body form, what might be interesting now is, again, to keep the graphic or the logo identifier a lot more distinctive in terms of not trying to follow the shape of the form itself. So what do you think? So far, so good? I'm just trying to explore some ideation stuff for these things to kind of look at it and see what this cycle might look like. Because it's interesting how it all comes down to packaging, battery locations. I'm sure it's all going to be pretty well stacked in through here, in between the wheels, with the occupant being right about in that area there. So it's going to be a pretty interesting closed body form. Shadow going to love when you get quiet and dark and go to work. Looks crazy. Yeah, that's fun stuff. So let me put just a couple more finishing touches on this guy, and we'll go from there, gang. Just a couple more little thumbnail sketches here. Got a couple of sticks. Short one looks faster. Which one? Sorry, you talking about this guy right here? Oops, sorry about that. This one? Short one looks faster. Is that the one you referred to, Brett? There it is. So I'll just move along here and go back at it in just a second here. We'll kind of get some response. Looking pretty good. I think the long tail, there might be the aero system. You get this thing. Let's pull that cockpit full forward a little bit more. Let's see what that happens here. Another variation of the theme, just trying to get the same. Okay, I do that one too. Yep, the one in the middle front row. 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 That guy? I'm sorry, I missed it. Yep, yep. One in the middle front row. One in the middle front row. Front view. Oh, this guy right here? Top left looks similar. That one. Oh, you mean that this guy? I'm sorry. Top left looks similar. Okay, so, but I think this is the front view. You kind of like that elevation. You look that front view. Front view, not row. Front view, not row. Yeah, that could be interesting. Put some more side body in this thing. I think that's interesting. I'm trying to get across here by pulling this form in here. See if we can kind of just modify that shape, run that through, and then that blister, that form, that pocket can come out of here. All that highlight line right there. You've got a little bit of an intake. Another variation on theme there. And that last one, let's do this. Let's kind of do this. There it is. It comes up. Would represent that shoulder coming up with that form. This comes up and just really kicks out and rolls right back in. So that's an interesting form study there, I think. Just kind of looking at variations on theme. I'm not sure which way they're going with this thing yet. So I'm just trying to kind of spinning in the dirt here. Drop that down just a bit more. A bit of shadow underneath this guy. A little bit of a secondary form coming right back in. Maybe a little more of a razor up front here. Just kind of take that in. Just there it is. There we go. Just some little thumbnail studies here. There we are, gang. So just take a looking at some very quick, if it's going to go closed body, this might be an interesting set of circumstances to deal with. I'm not quite sure. This guy, maybe I might just take that whole upper and bring it right back into play here with one of these guys. You just bring that canopy forward and just drop that right back and be extremely fluid and let that kind of just, that all pops back. So it's more of a closed body streamlined form. So there we are today, gang. I just thought I'd take a quick look at some of the logo work, and this is the first one. I'm not sure what the package looks like yet. I'm just trying to put together some closed body forms with some of this material, for example, what it might look like in both, for example, a little bit of side elevation and some front elevation. It might look like, starting here, some very loose little gesture sketches, trying to get the cockpit in place, the individual in position, a little closer to the form study itself, maybe a bit too much design. I think when it's all said and done, I would not be surprised if this thing doesn't become a real clean. Let's try this. One approach might be just as simple as this. This form can end up being as simple as this. You come along with a ground line here. That might be just as simple. Here's a front wheelbase set. And coming right back in and just doing this. Almost like a fish type form, where it just rolls back on itself. The portions aren't there yet. That might be a little lower here. Let's just do this. And then a real long tail in that guy. And then this comes up with just enough canopy right there to give ourselves. That could be interesting. Then just a bit of a splitter here. And a bit of a splitter there. Again, that could be that simple. Just a nice, clean, streamlined form. So maybe I'll explore that sometime next week, just looking at basic variations on theme here. Again, but I think the main thrust today was to go back and review some of the logo work, and also, for example, looking at maybe some of these closed body elevation studies for this e-bike program. Should be pretty interesting to see what kind of results we get from the logos. And then once that's established, we might depart from this for a couple of sessions and come back to it, and we kind of finish up some sketch rendering work once I get the information from them, if I'm invited to go back and become part of the process with them. So there we are. Let's kind of put these stacks together here, put all these sketches on top of one another, and there we are. Just little thumbnails, real quick little rapid pencil sketches to get this guy started. A lot of information yet to be received, but I thought I'd take a shot at it here. Again, I want to thank iPrat, Shadow, and Demetrius for joining me today. It was a tremendous time. I think the questions answered. Oh, by the way, before we leave, iPrat, did I answer your questions okay? I mean, some of these exercises help you as well? Please let me know before we sign off here. Really great to have everybody on board, and you have no idea what it means to me to have the kind of feedback we're getting here as we go from sketch to sketch or study to study. So really, very, very, very helpful. That's cool stuff, guys. Very cool stuff. So anybody, valuable teaching as always. Hey, thanks, Shadow. iPrat, I completely got you, and thanks to your answers, it's crystal clear to me that's great. That really helps, iPrat. But don't be a stranger. It's good to have you back on board. Demetrius, you as well. Hope everything's doing pretty good here. And before I sign off, I want to make this announcement too, just in case. It might be for the next couple of weeks. I might be a little bit tentative in terms of getting things. I need to work more on seeing and drawing through what yeah, that's right. That's a huge aspect, Brad. I mean, even though these sketches are as poorly as they're done, I'm visualizing through the object, what they're built out of: cylinders, forms, rectangles, spheres. All that elements are coming together. You mentioned a couple of streams before that you were using we're going to fine pen. I can't find the wiggle out. Oh yeah, here we go. You're talking about this Winsor Newton. Yeah, Winsor Newton. I think this is it right here. I'll put that right down. Pardon me, Demetrius, so you can see it. It's called a Winsor Newton pen. Outstanding. That thing is just terrific. This is a 0.3. They come 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. There you go. Got it. Sorry for the confusion there, Demetrius, but that's a great pen to work with. Very solid, very good nib on it. It doesn't destroy or get flattened out. Excellent. Thanks very much, Demetrius. But back to my announcement, very quick. We might have a couple of complications over the next 2 weeks. With Tuesdays and Thursdays with my wife's situation. So I'm going to make the announcement now just to be safe. I think starting next week, I might run a little bit later, maybe 2:30 instead of 2 o'clock. So we get the time to get Pam's stuff taken care of, and I'll be back in the office to make sure I keep this thing alive and active. Next week, I might go back into these cycles if I get some more information on these motorcycles. I might switch gears and go to a Bentley Blue Train Speed 6, kind of modify that guy. I've got a lot of things planned to work with here, so all that to say that if you have something you want me to work on, Demetrius, iPrat, they'll be helpful to you. Like maybe it's an instructional piece or maybe an illustration piece. Let me know. Drop me a note at my email address at jim@drcontrast.com. Be more than happy to help. And really interesting to kind of help you there. And secondly, almost if you have a moment, please visit my website at drcontrast.com. You'll see all my Twitch stuff, Instagram, some of the YouTube material, or on the Discord. There you go. That'd be great too. I'll make that announcement, Shadow. Thank you. And we should have, I'll make that clear before we start next week, that it might be a little bit of shift, instead of 2, maybe about 2:30 or thereabouts. But I want to make sure I keep it consistent and to stay active on the air here. So please visit my website at drcontrast.com. And as always, I always say this, and I think it's really, really critical that it's stated. Again, I appreciate all of your input. It's marvelous to have you guys on board. The input is terrific. The conversation has always been very helpful to me, and it makes things a little bit more manageable in terms of, am I going in the right direction? Am I helping people? What's it telling you? What are you telling me? It's very, very critical. So thanks for your support there. And last but not least, always remember to never forget to dare to be great. Just be great, because you are. Thanks very much, gang. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Hopefully. Take care and all the best.